Why do I call myself ever the outsider? Um, Other than it sounding cool. Well, it sounded cool in ninth grade when I was like in my emo phase. Well, I wasn't in my emo phase. I was watching my other friends at private school at the Calhoun School on 81st and West End in New York City. That's what they all listened to. I listened to anime theme songs and soundtracks to 80s action movies and TV shows. So like when they're like, "We're going to Warp Tour, Val. You want to go to Warp Tour?" I'm like, "Is that similar to Ranma One Half?" Uh, so Ever the Outsider is where I am now because I've always had an outsider's perspective. But looking back, I understand why. For a long time, it was just sort of this like, identity that I thought was cool and I had crafted. But to explain, I grew up on 147th and Lenox in Harlem, but I went to a really fancy private school, as I mentioned, which gave me a very unique perspective on people. I hate them. And no, not you guys. And it really, from a very young age, I knew that I was different. I knew, and everyone says it. Everyone's like, "I'm so unique and different." But the circumstances of my life are particularly odd. My biological father, was in prison from the day I was born. He wanted to get the fuck out of there until 2020. Well, he was in prison for 26 years, violated parole, and went back because he missed the camaraderie. And yeah, so private school, dad in jail. My mom worked really hard to send me there. I think I got in on a scholarship. Apparently, I tested horribly, but like the school was just like, I don't remember being tested to go there, but they were just like, "Yeah, Duval's, we want to see where this goes." So like they let me in anyway. So affirmative action, I guess, but also just like, you think I'm cute now? Imagine me when I was around, 6 years old, wearing a polo shirt, having a good time, talking like Bill Murray then also. And from the jump, I just knew that my life was going to be incongruent with other people, black and white. So like the black kids in my neighborhood up in Harlem, I knew my life was going to be completely different from theirs. My cousins who lived in the Bronx, kids in my neighborhood in Harlem. But also I knew that I was certainly not going to have or didn't have a similar life to the kids who would become many of which would become my friends at Calhoun. And like, I remember the first day of school getting picked up. This I do remember. I remember I got picked up on, was it Convent Ave? It must have been 145th and Convent. School bus picked me up on 145th and Lenox, and then it went up the hill to Convent. And there was a girl, Laval was her name. You can't make this shit up. My name is Duval. Her name was Laval. Just whatever. Really sweet girl. But like 5-6 years old, whenever that first day of school was, I turned around. She was sitting in the seat behind me, and I got on the seat and I turned around. I said, "Hi, my name's Duval." And Laval goes, black girl from Harlem. She goes, slap me in my mouth. And I don't know if I asked her then, like later on in school, or like, because we I went to the same school up until senior year in 12th grade. So we knew each other for years. I think I might have asked her like in high school, I was like, "Why'd you slap me in the mouth?" She said, "Because you were just so fucking corny." And that really just set the tone for my existence and why I don't date black women. But it's not why. I love black women. They just remind me of my aunts and cousins. It just feels incestuous. I don't know. You know what I mean? I date whoever is close to me. That's another thing I get. And we'll get to sort of many of the reasons that people try to critique me or silence me because they think I have an illegitimate point of view in life. But what was I talking about? Like dating black. I date who I'm around. You know what I mean? People try to get on me about that. They're just like, "Have you ever dated a black girl? You don't date." I'm like, I am lazy. I date who I'm around. I work in tech and entertainment. I hate to break this to you. Not a lot of black people. If Vanessa Williams had more daughters my age and, fucking Stacey Dash had some daughters my age, I'd be happy as a clam. But, I'm not going back to Harlem to prove a point. And obviously I'm being somewhat facetious here, guys, but you know what I mean. But also like, you ask that same question to a white girl, you go to Bushwick and I'm just like, Why don't you date like white dudes? You know, they're not, it's just like, oh, wait, you don't date redheads also? Redhead Becky? Wow, you have self-loathing. You know what I mean? So like there's all this, people are just, people who aren't black try to have so much control over black identity. It's like, nigga, ain't nobody asked you. So anyway, so I'll jump around and maybe I'll revisit this depending on which part of this is most interesting to you guys. But yeah, you know, my high school days and middle school days and, you know, hanging out at a house who lived in like a $10,000 a month apartment, who was a sweetheart of a friend, his mom, amazing woman, indulged us and let us this like party and drink and like be drunk and be idiots in a safe environment that was controlled and nobody got hurt and it was safer that way. But wild contrast to, you know, 147th and Lenox, you know, sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with 8 people. You know, my aunt and her kids and my mom. I said, but a different environment. My mom was not playing any of that like, oh, you're just going through an experimental phase. Like, I think she thought I was high once because I came home and I was just exhausted. I was just tired. I like went into my room and went to sleep. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She's like, get up. Get your ass up, dude. Get your ass up, dude. Because she thought I was like high or something. I'm like, if you don't I'm a fucking, wish you had the same energy about the guys who abused me that you dated. Yeah, so like I slipped that in there. This is what it's like being on a date with me. So, you know, traveling forward, you know, I bring all this up because, again, I had this, and I think people not from New York, I think a lot of people from New York have this kind of multicultural, multi-class experience, you know, particularly in the 80s in New York, I think, which I wasn't around for a lot of, but just anecdotally and like looking at history and my father even before he went to jail, there was a lot of commingling of like the yuppies and like, you know, people from Harlem and, you know, the Italians, like there was this like, and like the punks, they would all kind of like intersect each other in the city. And there is some of that still, but I think it's going in the opposite direction. I think old school New York, native New Yorkers remember in New York where there was this, you know, a lot of like rich white lesbians will always say the word intersectionality, like we need more intersectionality. There was actual intersectionality in New York City back in the day because we just kind of, it used to be a middle class city. People who working class people, more working class people used to be able to afford to live in New York City. So most kids who grew up in New York have a very like, we're more worldly. We are. That's why native New Yorkers are awesome. But these, you know, goofballs from Ohio and Wisconsin who come from very insular environments and have a very narrow view of other cultures because they're used to Black people being one sort of way, or they're used to Indians being one sort of way, or they're used to Asians being one sort of way. When they get to New York City, they're calibrated to their bullshit Midwest point of view. And I think that's where some tension comes. So when I speak, for example, the way I dress, the way I speak to them, they're like, does not compute. Black people don't speak like that where I'm from. Me, idiot. But it's like, all right, well, you know, how did Adam Clayton Powell Jr. speak? You know, how did the great, you know, Harlem luminaries and artists speak? And it's not conscious. You know what I mean? People think that my affectation is from a certain, like, is a put on, as an act. It's just like, I'm a fucking nerd. People were getting shot outside my front door. My dad was in jail. I sat my black ass in my home, in my apartment, and played video games and read books. Sorry. So all this to say, building up to Zohran Mamdani. So, you know, I posted that video criticizing him for some of the reasons, you know, about gentrification and about him being a candidate of transplants and frankly, affluent gentrifiers who don't want to hold themselves accountable for their culpability in economic inequality in the city. It's evil billionaires who don't actually really live here. I'm not, you know, someone making $185,000 working remotely and riding my bike casually to work. No, it's not me. I'm not the bad guy. Go communism. A lot of those people were the ones who were criticizing me, not on the points I was raising, but my identity, my right to have the point of view that I have. And I'm not saying I've never said I'm 100% right. I'm not one of these goofball, like, influencers who are right all the time, and there's only one way of thinking, and it's just like everything Zoran does is bad, or everything Trump does is good. It's just like that's no few are the extremes, said a great Stoic philosopher. All right, so like, um, what was I talking about? Criticizing my right to have a more moderate centrist point of view because that's like not black because they read about that in some textbook at Wesleyan 8 years ago. So they're an expert in on what black, morality and virtue and politics are. So all that to say, these are the people who were criticizing me on a personal level, on an identity level, on a right to exist level, which has been my lifelong quest to simply be allowed to be me, even from my own people. I had plenty of cousins who were just like, man, this nigga white. Nigga white as hell. Look at this nigga now. He got his hands in his pockets. Think he white. I was at a fucking we we did they used to, my family, my cousins, my aunts used to put on these New Edition performances at Tracy Towers in the community room where they would put us in these olive green, like double-breasted suits with flat tops. And we'd be like, if it isn't love, I doesn't feel this way. Why do I feel so? 5 years old doing the fucking choreograph with my cousins. I got a picture. I'll insert it. Anyway, my right to exist, being black. They would call me white. They would say, put your hand, like they would find these random things about me to make me feel othered. And not all of them. My cousin Steven, my cousin Brandon, rest in peace. He died when we were very young. He had a kidney failure. Because he didn't have access to the same resources that a lot of these rich kids who are now dominating New York City political culture and conversation. And that's why I do what I do, because they sent me in. I was just having this thought, recalling being this like young, light-skinned black kid going to this private school, but living in the hood. My dad's in jail. I'm just like, God, why does his life have to be so fucking intricate? Can I just like give me a simple story here? But I realize I was the one they sent in. And whoever they is, I don't know, was it literally my mother? Yes, my mother literally sent me to the school because she wanted me to have certain opportunities. But as I've gotten older, I've looked at it as a responsibility where I was one of few, if at all any, kids on 147th and Lenox that got to go to a school where the kids had nannies and private drivers and penthouse apartments. And at the time, I was just having a good old time. I was just like getting hand jobs from these Jewish girls being like, woo, we are living large. I'm a mensch. And it was fun. It was a really good time. But looking back, and as I've grown up, I've realized it was a responsibility. And for all the conversations that happen in rooms that people like myself, of my skin tone and darker, and people who are white who don't have financial means, who are not in the room when these fucking entitled rich kids talk about the future of your world. And I witnessed it from middle school, high school, college. I went to Emerson College. I've lived in this world of affluent, rich white liberals who, many of which, have good intentions. But I've also seen the entitled, I know better than you, and I'm going to show these brown people what they need because they can't help themselves. And I was sent in, I now realize, to be the ambassador and advocate for all the people who are not in the room. So every kid, every family, every kid who grew up in Harlem, who didn't have a dad also, but didn't have the shot to go to a fancy school. That doesn't make me better or smarter or any of that shit. That's not what I'm saying. It just gave me a view and a glimpse into a world that I otherwise would not have had, that I think is very important. And it's why I react so viscerally to Zohran Mamdani, because he is the embodiment of that. He went to these schools, but the key difference between he and I is that he comes from money. He comes from resources. And he embodies that liberal arrogance of academically talking about brown people's problems, doing a photo shoot in a NYCHA apartment building and smiling and being like, we're going to get to the bottom of it, and then fucking off and then never getting to the bottom of it, because I've seen that my entire life. So I thought I'd just kind of reintroduce myself to people and kind of help give you a glimpse into why I have the perspectives that I have. Because I genuinely don't want to come from a place of hate. I've been an angry person for various reasons. Molestation! But as as we get older, you know, other people can't be the way of allaying your pathologies and sadness. You know, we can't take out our frustrations that we have grown up with on other people. And that's what I did. Anger, you know, just lashing out at people and just being being a lot. I was a lot. You think I'm bad now. You should have seen me 10 years ago. But I'm trying to reconcile the unique perspective that I was given the gift of with things that I see as being consistent wrongs in the world, specifically as it relates to culture, in this city, and gentrification and economic inequality, you know, and people think I'm some like rich kid whose dad is white or mom is white. Just Puerto Rican and Antigua, just beige island people. You know, I'm sure my great-great-grandmother was an Irish indentured servant, I'm sure, but other than that, nothing but just niggas. And I want to fight for, again, everyone who wasn't and isn't in the room. And, you know, I look at how NYCHA tenants are being treated with this rental ripoff hearing stuff. And, you know, these proposed property tax increases, which again, who's that going to hit? Working class New Yorkers and brown people. This estate tax thing, lowering the threshold from, you know, 7 million to 750,000, which makes it difficult for the few black and brown homeowners and working class New Yorkers to pass on generational wealth, which is how you get ahead in this fucking world. So I learned white tricks, and I'm going to use them to benefit my people. So I hope that came off from a place of love, and that's what in the past I've not clearly communicated in the work that I do and the art that I put out there, the writing, the comedy. It comes from a place of love. So we got to get out. Like I don't need or want to hate Zohran Mamdani. I don't. I dislike and am suspicious and concerned about the people he has around him and the policies he has proposed. If he amends them to benefit people, to keep New Yorkers safe of all kinds, to not displace native and generational New Yorkers, you know, I can live with that. But I'm not just going to be quiet and be a good boy because people think I'm an Uncle Tom house nigger, because I question whether or not he's in the best interest of black and brown and working class New Yorkers. And I'm not going to be quiet because he did a photo shoot with a fucking basketball player. And I'm supposed to be like, oh, okay, all is solved, all is well. So that's me.